What's up out there, everybody? Welcome back to Movies Never Say Die. This is episode 7 of my top 100 action movies from the 1990s series. If you missed the first 6, they will be linked in this video for you guys to check out later. But today, diving into movies number 40 through 31, 10 more kick-ass action movies that deliver everything from martial arts to gunplay, from the high seas to time traveling to a boarding school. These 10 movies deliver a little bit of it all and more. So let's get into it. Coming in at number 40 is a classic action flick from the 90s. It centers on a cook aboard a battleship that's taken over by mercenaries, and for Steven Seagal, saving the day won't be a job, it'll be an adventure in 1992's Under Siege, also starring Gary Busey and Tommy Lee Jones. This was certainly Seagal's most well-received action flick, and I think rightfully so, as it takes the Die Hard formula and really works it to precision. As a former SEAL, Seagal is a bit more subdued in this role, but he still oozes tons of masculinity, and I think it's perfect for the needs of this tightly crafted plot. Under Siege, I think, blends gunplay and suspense and Seagal's trademark martial arts to give this film plenty of contained action. The use of the ship gives the movie a realistic vibe that I think really serves as the perfect playground for Seagal to save the day. But really, to me, where this movie shines is from the dual villains in Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey, who I think easily outshine Seagal. I think Busey is pleasantly sadistic and Tommy Lee Jones is world-class maniacal, and they are the stars of the film. You love to hate these guys, and that's what makes Steven Seagal taking them out so rewarding. We're jumping from one classic action flick to another for my 39 pick. This one starring Jean-Claude Van Damme as a drifter being hunted by killers and punching rattlesnakes in the face. It's the full-throttle action thriller from John Woo, 1993's Hard Target, also starring Lance Henriksen, Arnold Vosloo, and Yancey Butler. Now, Hard Target would give Jean-Claude Van Damme that high-profile director to work with in John Woo, and I think the result is an elegant dance of violent action and bravado and melodrama. The humans hunting humans for sport story has been done before, but I think in the hands of Woo and Van Damme, it's still a plenty delightful ride. The plot is simple, but it's effective, and the visual appeal of this movie, I think, still holds up today, as Woo just seemed to know how to frame Van Damme to capture the energy of his moves, from kicking glasses off a dude's face to diving while shooting. It's just magically cheesy. It's a buffet of all the insanity that we loved from the mid-90s action genre. Van Damme is really just soaking in the scenery, and Lance Henriksen and Arnold Vosloo are fantastic villains. Admittedly, Hard Target doesn't break many genre molds, but it's a crisply shot film filled with a blend of small and large-scale action that I think still holds up great today. Now, my number 38 flick may be a bit forgotten to some of you guys, but it's a nostalgic favorite of mine. It's a Die Hard-inspired thriller set at a boys' school that's taken over by terrorists, and these kids have no weapons, but they only have each other. And Toy Soldiers from 1991, starring Sean Astin, Will Wheaton, Louis Gossett Jr., and Keith Coogan. I will assume I have this film higher on the list than most would put it, and I will admit there is a strong built-in element of predictability to this movie, but it doesn't get in the way of Toy Soldiers being a thrilling Die Hard knockoff with a collection of lovable young characters you want to see succeed. Sean Astin and Will Wheaton anchor the young cast, and the iconic Louis Gossett Jr. cements the entire film as the mentor figure and the one who does believe that these kids can get the job done. I think this movie really keeps a quick pace. It's filled with close calls and suspense and bursts of practical action, but really where Toy Soldiers shines is really in the fact that it doesn't try to do too much. It keeps these kids in their own lane. The story crafts a clever game of cat and mouse, and the villains are just evil enough to feel intimidating, but not too much to where you couldn't imagine these kids outsmarting them. Moving along to number 37 is a film you could say was the first Die Hard knockoff, because when terrorists would take over Dulles International Airport on the verge of Christmas, John McClane would find himself once again in the wrong place at the wrong time, but this time he would have shoes in Die Hard 2, Die Harder from 1990. Easily the best Die Hard knockoff since the first Die Hard. Die Harder is like Home Alone 2. It just does everything that worked well in the first movie and amplifies it. And despite the predictability, the sequel is on its own a strong action movie. The airport is really the perfect playground for all the chaos, and the buffet of chase sequences and shootouts and fight scenes are plenty enough for this fast-moving real-time thriller. Now, admittedly, William Sadler is no Alan Rickman, but he gives the movie a menacing villain for McClane to battle with, and the result, I think, is still one of the best action romps from the decade. Die Hard 2 just has a charming genre atmosphere to it, and McClane feels even more at home in this role to really build on the character as he fights through just an army of bad guys. Plus, the practical action and the production design are fantastic in this movie. It gives the entire film a gritty realism that still holds up all these years later. Now, next up at 36 is a movie that certainly has more dramatic flair than it is for being a traditional action flick, but in 1994, the truth would need a soldier, and that man would be Harrison Ford, returning to the role of Jack Ryan in Clear and Present Danger from director Philip Noyce, also starring Willem Dafoe, Ann Archer, and Joaquin de Almeida. There is just something about Harrison Ford in the role of Jack Ryan that can lure me in, and maybe higher on my list than most would place it. I do think this is a fine action movie when the violence and the intensity does kick in. Clear and Present Danger has a methodical pace to it. It's not nearly as in your face as most traditional action movies were from the decade, but the strategic progression of this story, I think, is perfect for elevating intensity and emotion and intrigue. The story is like a game of chess with many moving pieces, but it is easy to follow, it's easy to invest in, and it results in the action hitting much harder when it does strike. Plus, I think the entire cast, from Harrison Ford through the supporting players like Willem Dafoe to even the smaller characters, are brought to life with realistic performances. This is another of those films that feels like it has history, it feels like it's lived in, and to this day, I think it's quality cinema. We're sticking with the theme of government and military for my 35 pick. It's a movie that takes a group of terrorists, an elite team of commandos, an analyst, and a flight attendant, and puts them all on an airliner together in the thrilling Executive Decision from 1996, starring Kurt Russell, Halle Berry, and a star-studded ensemble cast. I would say Executive Decision is a movie that gets a bit overlooked because it's a thrilling, high-altitude adventure that really delivers a lot of edgier seat suspense and tension and nail-biting action, and just a fantastic collection of performances led by Kurt Russell and Halle Berry. The plot is really able to keep you guessing, and the organization of the story layers creates a strong rewatch value. The mission itself is simple, but the ramifications couldn't be greater. This naturally just pulls you into the story. It will have you hanging on every move this small group of heroes makes to save the day. Executive Decision is often more known as the film that Steven Seagal dies at the beginning of, but Kurt Russell acts his ass off in this movie, much like Halle Berry does, and everybody overall really does give it all to give this film a collection of lived-in characters that only amplifies the intensity of the central mission that will have you hanging on every move. We're traveling through time for my number 34 pick. They killed his wife 10 years ago, and there's no time to save her until now in 1994's Time Cop, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, Mia Sara, and Ron Silver, as well as Gloria Rubin from director Peter Hyams. You know, I don't think Time Cop gets the love that it should for being a well-crafted time travel action flick. Van Damme is strong in this role. He's able to bring the emotional layering, but also easily feels like the tough action lead when needed to give this lead an engaging duality. And the plot, I think, is unique, where many films in the genre were missing such items from this time. Time Cop really does keep a quick-moving pace. It doesn't overdo the time travel aspect to get too convoluted, but most importantly, the story doesn't get in the way of what makes a Van Damme movie great, and that's being the action and seeing him kicking ass, which he gets ample opportunity to do so. I think the blend of practical action and solid digital effects for the time period are able to give this film a lasting visual visual appeal. Van Damme coming in and out of time still looks crisp, and the practical stunt work still holds up to give the entire film a timeless vibe that you can't help but appreciate. Coming up next at number 33 is a cyber action thriller starring 2 Oscar winners. The Only Privacy Left Is Inside Your Head, and Tony Scott's Enemy of the State from 1998 starring Will Smith and Gene Hackman. Now, I was a little torn when pondering to include Enemy of the State on this list. Admittedly, it's slightly more of an adventure flick, but I had to put it on here regardless because when the action does kick in, I think it's a perfect complement to the compelling plotline, and with Will Smith in the lead, you're effectively pulled right into the middle of the intensity just effortlessly as he fights to get his life back. The cyber thriller element of the story creates a strong and appealing atmosphere. Smith and Hackman together are a dynamite duo. Enemy of the State, I think, effectively keeps its foot on the gas, and the hurdles thrown at Smith's character seem insurmountable, which is what just makes this a riveting ride of cyber terror and close calls and practical action. It's not as flashy as Smith's other films, but it's one of his best and most well-rounded movies. Coming up next at number 32 is a film set in a world with no justice, where one man has been chosen to protect the innocent in 1994's The Crow, starring the late Brandon Lee, Michael Wincott, and Ernie Hudson from director Alex Proyas. Still, in my opinion, one of the best CBMs ever made. The Crow is a film that creates atmosphere about as good as one can. This story will immediately lure you into this dark and seedy world and will instantly connect you with the pain of the central character. As we all know, Brandon Lee would be tragically shot during the filming of this movie, and the performance that he brought to The Crow was leaps and bounds his best. Now, I won't argue that this is much more of a dark drama than it is a pure action movie, but when the action does hit, I think it's hyper-violence at its most elegant and its most meaningful because of that emotional investment that you have in this man seeking justice against those who commit evil. I think Michael Wincott is awesome in the shoes of the villain. Ernie Hudson leaves his impression as well. Few films are as gloomy and tragic both on and off the screen as The Crow, but regardless, it's a film that can command your attention no matter how many times you've seen it. And coming in at number 31 is a film that's as fun as it is cheesy. It stars Nicolas Cage as an unlucky convict aboard Con Air from 1997, also starring John Malkovich, John Cusack, Steve Buscemi, Ving Rhames, and many others from director Simon West. Nicolas Cage would deliver a trio of blockbuster action flicks from 96 to 97, and right in the middle was this wildly adventurous action bonanza that feels comically masculine like the movies from the 80s, but with all the cutting-edge spectacle the genre would be known for in the mid to late 90s. Con Air is a ridiculous ride of awesome action and bravado and special effects, and Cage and Malkovich fighting on the screen and competing who could just chew up the scenery the most. And the result, I think, is a humorous ride of well-directed genre excess. The ensemble cast really is impressive. I think everybody gets their moments, both large and small, to leave their impression. I think Cage is like a parody of the action star without actually being the parody of the action star, but it's surprisingly perfect for the tone of this roller coaster of melodramatic action. Con Air is certainly not without its flaws, but few films are better when it comes to sitting back for a movie with your friends to remember the nostalgia of 90s cinema. And that wraps up episode 7, guys, covering films 40 through 31. Awesome movies, all worth checking out if you haven't seen them. Once again, if you've missed the past 6 episodes, they'll be linked all over this place for you guys to check out later. Be on the lookout for episode 8 coming very soon, breaking down films 30 through 21. We're getting close to the top of the list, guys. I hope to see you guys all there. Thank you so much for watching, as always. It is greatly appreciated. I will see you in the next episode, and until then, movies never say die.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?